Okay, now that we've finished mixing our tracks in Sonar and we've output them into a two-track wave file, I'm now in SoundForge and I brought that in. You can see here, it's called Light Along the Way. Now, what I do is I convert it to a SoundForge native file that ends in a .frg, and the reason for that is because this gives me unlimited undos of anything that I might apply in here and gives me a lot more control while I'm messing with it. And then eventually, once it's all done, I'll export it again as a wave file once I'm happy with it. Basically, what SoundForge is a mastering tool set. Allows you to do any number of things. I can. One of the things I have to do here is I need to take out this dead space at the very beginning. So I'll go ahead and I'll cut that out. And then, of course, you can monitor everything that you're listening to. So I'm going to go ahead and play a little bit of this. And this will probably give you your first real indication of how everything has transformed since we started with Band in a Box. It's still a little bit flaky in terms of some of the devices that are in here, doing a little bit of cutting out, but I think you'll get a much better sense of how it's beginning to come together. All right, so that's the basic tracks as you would normally hear them in Sonar. And of course, in Sonar, I had to adjust the general volumes, for output. I keep it at about a -6, try to keep it at about a -6 dB output, because as I apply some of these changes in here, it's going to bring it up higher. And I'll kind of walk you through the process. Now, most of what I use, you have any number of effects. I mean, dynamics like compressors and so on and so forth. But the best thing that I have found, it comes with some processors from Isotope that are just absolutely excellent, and that's primarily what I use. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up Mastering EQ, and this is generally the way that things work. Now you'll see that this is changing the EQ across the board for these tracks. And what I can do is I can go ahead and preview it without making the change. So I'll go ahead and now that was with the change applied, but I haven't made any changes to the actual file itself or to the actual recording itself. Now I'm going to bypass it and I'm going to listen to the same thing, and as I'm listening, I'll take the bypass off and maybe you'll be able to hear the changes that occurred here. Now, I don't know if you could pick that up very well, but there was just a lot more clarity, and as you can see, I beefed up the top end there and took out some of the muddiness that was in it by taking this down, this frequency down a little bit. Now, I can hit OK, and that's going to apply that mastering EQ setting to this entire track, or this entire wave file. Now, it's not actually modifying the wave file, it's just modifying the sounds. I can do the same here. Of course, one of the things that you find out is that you have to kind of understand the sequence you want to go in. So, and they'll be slightly different as you go through them. So you might apply EQ first and then apply reverb. And then, the final step is always the limiter, because the limiter is what brings it all up to volume and kind of the commercial grade level that you're shooting for, as far as being present and being at the right volume. But you'll get a different effect if you were to choose the reverb and then do the EQ. So I've already applied the EQ. I'm not going to apply any reverb on this. And let's say I've gone through whatever processes I'm going to do, and the final thing that I'm going to do now is the limiter. So I'll pull up the limiter, and of course there's all sorts of presets in here. And depending on the kind of sound that you're looking for, I myself go for the smooth. The smooth limiting is just about perfect for the kind of music that I do. And again, I can preview it if I want to hear what it's going to do. Now, you should have been able to tell the difference there because there was just an awful lot more presence. A lot of the instruments came forward quite a little bit when I applied it. You should have been able to hear that. It's maybe you couldn't because, of course, you're not hearing the same thing I am. Now I'll go ahead and apply that. And what I've done now is, as I modified this soundtrack here with those two effects. Now I can play around with this quite a bit. In fact, I can close this up, and if I save it, even though I saved it, when I pull it back up, I still have all my undos in place. So I may decide after listening to it for a while, I've closed it and I've saved it. As long as I have it in this .frg format, when I pull it back up, I might decide, I really do need some reverb. And so in which case I would go ahead and undo that last step, which was the limiter. And then I'll do a step with reverb in it and then go back and then do the limiter on top of that. So it gives you all that unlimited undo capability, allows you to play around with it quite a bit. So now here we have our pretty much mastered kind of track. And I'll play again for you. Okay, now there's probably going to be a few dropouts in there, and that's just an artifact of the fact that we've got all these things competing for our soundboard, our sound equipment. So, but I think you get the overall gist of what's going on here, and hopefully that helps you. And the next thing that we'll go into will be, once we have several tracks together, how I put it together with CD Architect.